Sure.
The recording is on, Kamalji. Go ahead, please.
Hello, hi Rajivji. This is Kamal here from Merasangeet.com and a warm welcome to you on our show Chat and Chai.
Hi, Kamalji. Thank you. And a happy Lodi to all our listeners and to you, of course.
Very happy Lodi to you as well, Rajiv. Right. So now we move on to some bigger issues here, Rajivji. A lot of happening going on there. A lot of people, tense, especially children who've been wanting to study in the United States, probably put in everything in stake. So they went all the way to the US only to be sent back. So anything that you want to talk about this particular incident, which sparked off a few weeks ago, which has got a lot of other people who've got their kith and kin, probably their siblings coming to the United States for higher studies. What should they be looking into? What are the factors, as Indians, we should be taking care of, especially while we send our children or siblings to the United States?
Kamalji, I think I would like to address this topic of entering the United States a little bit more broadly and then focus it on the question that you specifically asked. So I want to take 10-15 minutes time going over
Sure.
what is involved here. First of all,
Sure.
people have a misunderstanding. When you land at the airport of the United States, just because you have landed does not mean you will be allowed to enter. So there is a dual permissioning here. First time when you go to the consulate in your home country and get a visa stamp on your passport, or if you are in one of the countries where a visa is not required, the same idea. The visa is merely a permission to land at the airport. So if you get a 6 month visa or a 5 year visa or a 10-year visa, it merely means that you can land at the airport, any airport in the United States, or port if you're coming by ship, or border if you're coming by car. You can come to the border of the United States, but you're not allowed entry automatically. That doesn't mean you can come and stay for 6 months or 5 years or 10 years. It simply means you can come to the border. So, visa is a permission from the US State Department acting through its consulates to arrive at the border. When you arrive at
Right. Right.
when you arrive at the border, the authorities at the border, they are called Customs and Border Protection. They are a part of the Department of Homeland Security, a different department than State Department. DHS then examines you and decides whether or how long you can come in for. Whether you are coming on a visa waiver, what is called ESTA, or whether you are coming on a visa stamping, F1 visa, H1 visa, J1 visa, K1 visa, any visa, even a green card. If
Mm-hmm.
you enter the United States, you are examined by the Customs and Border Protection, and they look into the facts of your case. Okay, so at that point they decide. For example, if you're coming on a tourist visa or a business visa, they decide how long you can stay. They can give you a 3 day stay or a 3 month stay or 6 month stay. So even if your visa is expiring tomorrow, you can be given stay that is much longer than your visa, because visa is merely permission to come to the border. Once you come to the border, CBP decides how long you can stay. For some
All
visa,
right.
for some visas like H1 visas, F1 visas, J1 visas, E visas, there are certain pre-decided periods. For example, F1 can usually stay as long as they are going to school. That's called DS, duration of status. H1 can
Mm-hmm.
stay during the approval. Remember, most countries, when you land at the airport, you've got to have a passport that is valid 6 months beyond the intended period of stay. So if you want to stay here 1 year, your passport must be valid for a year and a half when you enter. India has this exemption. India, if you are an Indian passport holder, you don't have to meet that 6 month requirement. As long as the passport is valid for the duration of the stay, you are allowed to stay for the whole period. Now, this is what brings me to the two most problematic areas which we have seen recently: F1 entries and H1 entries. F1 are the students. The
Right.
part that you wanted me to talk about, how some of these folks have been turned back at the airport. I want you to understand, when you are turned back at the airport, there can be a couple of ways: a relatively okay way and a very nasty way. We'll come to
Mm-hmm.
that, but once let me tell you what happens when you land at the border. When you come to the airport, typically Customs and Border Protection spends about 5 seconds to 10 seconds with you, unless they have some questions that they want more details on. They put you, this is called primary inspection, which means just a few seconds. But if they decide they want to
Right.
question you more closely, they put you in something called secondary inspection, which means you'll be questioned at greater length. When they put you in secondary
Mm-hmm.
inspection, they want to look at everything you've got to say usually. Um, they want to understand what the purpose of your visit is, whether what you are saying actually conforms to the stated or allowed purpose of your visit. For example, if you're coming on a tourist visa and they found, let's say, appointment letter for a job in the United States, they'll say immediately you're committing fraud because it's not your intention to visit. Or if they found invitations to a marriage you are going to have while you're in the United States, they could say this is a misuse of tourist visa. Or when you come on a student visa, typical questions they could ask you: one, um, what are your plans? What are your career plans? Why are you coming to this school? So you have to talk about what you were doing in India or in your home country, how you change your plans and decide to come to stay and study in the United States, how your degree will help you towards your career goals. Um, you do plan to go back to your home country. Of course, once you enter, you can change your mind. That's legal. But they do want to know more about it. How did you find out about this school? Okay. Is this school accredited? Go ahead.
Right. Rajiv, I was just thinking, like that's pretty okay. I mean, if it was just that, but how is it that children who've got admission, they've got those papers, they've got admission in a particular school or an institute, with they admit, then the visa comes in, then they reach the airport, and then they are turned back. So that was a little
No,
alarming.
yeah, no, that is not alarming at all. That's normal. That's normal because it is within the purview of the CBP to question you about these issues. Let me explain to you how the
Right.
student process works. First, typically, you send out, if you are sitting in India or any other country, you'll send out to various universities where you want to apply. You will ask them for an application package. You apply, they either accept you or they don't. If they accept you, they go over your financials. Excuse me, I'm getting a little bit of a
Right.
cold.
Right.
So they go over your financials and they issue a
Mhm.
document called I-20. You take the I-20 and you go to the consulate and get a visa stamp. The visa stamp is merely an acknowledgement by the consulate that your financials seem to be straightened out, and that they allow you to arrive at the border to ask for admission. So when you come to the airport, you land, you're telling the CBP, I'm here, I've got a visa, my finances are straightened out. The government believes I'm going to go back after my student status is over. Let me into the United States. Here, CBP can open its own inquiry. They can ask you the same questions again. And usually, the biggest problem is that students don't realize that there are two kinds of degrees: accredited and unaccredited. Okay, when a degree
Okay.
is
Right.
unaccredited, it has a much lesser value in the eyes of the government, as well as generally speaking, because unaccredited degrees, like I'm sure you have them in India also, are looked upon as lesser in value. So government can start questioning: you were spending thousands of dollars to come to the United States. Why are you going for this program which is not accredited? I think it's a good idea for students to generally become aware what is accredited and what is not accredited. Okay,
Okay.
how do you find that out? Well, the US Department of Education, which is a central body, a federal body, like in India you have union ministry. So US Department of Education has its website. In the Department of Education website, they list the agencies which can accredit degrees for each state in the United States. So let's say the Department of Education lists agency A and agency B for the state of California. You are taking a particular degree, you can go to those agencies' websites and see if those degrees have been accredited. Okay, if they have been accredited,
Mhm.
the chances of getting an uneventful entry are better. Okay, now that's one part. There's another part to it. Sometimes some schools get targeted. They get targeted by the government for investigation because of certain practices. And the most notorious of them was the Tri Valley University case, which happened a few years ago. We were very actively involved with that. At one point, I remember doing a
Yes.
conference call with almost 600 plus students because so many
My
students,
God.
yeah, so many students were affected. I think I spent like 3.5 hours in the first conference call I had with the students, going
Oh
over
my.
all the options, all the details, and then we helped them all through the process for several months. It was a very painful time. Tri Valley
Yes.
University, one of the biggest problems which I raised with the government and other people did too, was that you have been investigating this university for over 1 year. How could you let the students be victimized by paying in very hard earned money? Many of the students were not coming from the most affluent, richest families. How could you
Yes.
let them waste their money while you quote unquote investigated the university, fully knowing that you were going to close down the university and the students would lose their money? Okay, so that's another problem. Universities can be targeted and you wouldn't know. But chances are, if the university is reputable and they are accredited, you will be okay coming to the United States. Okay,
Okay.
so that's the
Right.
student visa. Now, I want to talk about the nasty return and the not so nasty return. When you come to the airport and the government has interviewed you, they have a couple of options, obviously. One option is, about three options actually. One option is to let you in, fine, they are convinced you're okay, great, you're done. Another option is they can actually ask you, look, we're not going to let you enter. We suggest you withdraw your application for admission, which is a good thing because if you withdraw
Yes.
your application for admission, you can return back to your home country and still come back on some other kinds of visas. But if they say, no,
Right.
we are going to formally decline your entry, that means you will be now subject to a 5 year bar from entering the United States. Okay, so if you are formally denied entry,
Oh, okay.
you can get a 5 year bar. There are some certain limited entries available. Sometimes they let you in on something called parole, where you can just come in for a few days and finish some parts of the process and then return. So there are several options. But the most important thing for students to know is recognize your degrees, know what your career plans are. And the government can go into your bags and your baggages and they go into what documents you are carrying. And if you're carrying documents that are um, discordant with your stated purpose of entry, you are going to be in trouble. Here, another problem is if they find fraud, which is a very big issue. If they find fraud or misrepresentation, you will be permanently barred from entering USA. Permanent bars are very hard to overcome. We had a case recently, a marriage to a US citizen. The gentleman did not realize that in one of the entries, an officer had made a fraud finding against him. And the
Oh my God.
next thing is he got stuck with a permanent bar. And when we took over the case, he had gone to a couple of lawyers, they had tried. When we took over the case, my feeling was that this fraud finding was itself baseless. So we fought with the government, took us 2 years and several thousand
Oh
dollars
God.
to get this straightened out. We were able to get this straightened out, but it can get very complicated. So make sure that your
Right.
entry is clean. And I recommend the same thing for people who are coming on E visas or H visas. H visa people typically they need to know where they are working, who their employer is, what their job is. Many times they are authorized to work in California and they land in Cleveland, Ohio. Of course, the government is
Oh.
suspicious. The government is suspicious because you are authorized to work in one place, you are landing in another. What's going on? So these are some of the issues that everybody needs to be aware of.
All right. Okay. So thank you so much, Rajiji, for this detailed discussion. Now, finally, we move on to some queries sent in by our listeners here. There's one query here sent in by a listener who says his similar queries we've been getting for a very, very long time now, Rajivji. There's this listener here who was married about 10 years back. His children were born in India, he says, and the family has been residing in India ever since. Now he wants to, his wife and his younger son are here with him in India. It's taken a while, he says, for the elder son to be with him. So, is there a process for him to kind of really hurry up with the matter so that the son is here with him? He's applied for him, he says.
Well, once you have applied for their green card, if the child is an adult or the son is an adult and he is a professional, your only other option that I can think of easily is either an H1, of if he can come through his company, it's an L1. These are visas that are not affected by a pending green card application. Student visa could be denied, even though I myself came to USA when my student on student visa when my green card was pending, because I was able to convince the government that I will never misuse it. So of course, you can try, but most obvious and good visas for a pending green card applicant are H1, L1 if you come from a country that allows E visas, E1, E2, O1, which is for people with extraordinary capabilities. And of course, you can also apply for a green card through another category like an investor visa, because you're allowed to apply for a green card through as many categories as you like. But other than that, there is no option that will help you speed up the case.
All right. Another query here from a listener, Rajiji, who says they were in the United States for about 5 years. Their husband was on H1. The wife was also working, and now they say the H1 has expired and they need to go move out of the country. So they say, is it a good idea to, go out of the country, probably go to Canada or go back to India and then reapply? Or they say, would there be any chance for them to kind of continue here in the United States?
Their H1 visa has expired or their H1 status has expired?
The status, the status has expired. The
Okay,
right word.
once your status expires, you need to get an extension of the H1. If you're talking about just
Okay.
staying in the United States, you can, of course, apply for a tourist status within the United States before your H1 expires. And, while that application is pending, you can continue to stay in the US. You are not illegal. You are considered to be an authorized period of stay. So if you are still on H1, you can apply for tourist status, and a few months it'll take at least to for the government to decide on the application. During that time, you can stay in the United States.
All right, Rajivji. So these were the queries, Rajivji, sent in by our listeners here. Thank you so much for all your time and for being a part of our show.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, and thank you all listeners to listening to our show and to us talk.
Thank you, Rajivji. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Pranam.
Pranam, Rajivji.